What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, the D-backs take down the Giants in game one, so we got to break it down. Is Corbin Carroll a lock for the Hall of Fame? Yes, I said it. And is Ketel Marte back to being the best second baseman in the National League? Breaking it all down on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day listening to. The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter, at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. And today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Now let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's talk about this D-backs game one victory over the San Francisco Giants, because we got to see an offensive explosion from the D-backs, which we love to see. They continue their offensive momentum that we saw against the Chicago Cubs. This D-backs offense is, of course, they look better when they're at home, playing at Chase Field under their, in front of their home crowd, depending on who the D-backs are playing. It may not always be a home crowd at Chase Field, because let me say that crowd was raucous against the Chicago Cubs, but was it always D-backs fans in the stands? That's the question I have, because it was very loud for both the Cubs and the D-backs in the stadium, but I really don't care. I just like it when Chase Field is packed, albeit I would like it to see it be packed with a few more D-backs fans. But offensive explosion once again. We got to see a bunch of guys do good things in the lineup, the Corbin Carrolls, the Thomases, the Ketel Martes of the world, right? But the real story of this game is not the offense, because the offense being great, you love to see it. But the story of the game is another weird Zach Gallen start, because Zach Gallen, once again, had just been, I said on the podcast yesterday, Zach Gallen in his last 5 starts had like a 5.28 ERA. And in between those starts, he did have that complete game shutout, which is just insane to think about considering how bad he's been recently. And this was just another weird start for Zach Gallen, where he gives up a couple runs in the first inning, gives up a home run in that first inning. Later in the game, he walks 3 straight batters, even with the bases loaded. He walks in a run. Like, this is just a weird Zach Gallen game from start to finish. 5 innings, 6 hits, 6 Ks, 3 walks, 4 earned runs, and a home run allowed. Just a weird stat line overall for Zach Gallen. And when you're watching him, if you look at some of the numbers, the velocity just wasn't there for Gallen, which is weird. Lower than usual. I mean, he's had random starts this year. I was looking at his like a game by game fastball velo. There was like a point at some stretch during the year where he was like, sitting between 93 and 94, and then all of a sudden in the next game it just boom out of nowhere 92. And so I wonder if this is just an anomaly for him, where he's just been pitching a lot recently. End of the season, is he just a little bit arm fatigued? Is that why his velo is down? Because fastball, all his other pitchers, like, it was basically down a tick in this game. So I wonder what that is. Is it just arm fatigue, end of the season type stuff? Like, what can you do to hopefully keep him fresh? Because Zach Gallen cannot pitch like this down the stretch. It's going to be tough for the D-backs to make the playoffs if Zach Gallen pitches like this in another start. And even if the D-backs do make the postseason, it's hard for me to imagine the D-backs having a deep and successful postseason run with their best starting pitcher just looking like a back-end starter in a rotation and not like a legit number 1 starter. in your playoff rotation now, I wouldn't even be surprised if you want to go at Merrill Kelly as your game one starter in the playoffs with how Zach Gallen has looked to end this season. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why Torrey didn't pull him out earlier in the game against the Giants, because when he was struggling, walking batter after batter, I felt like that would have been the perfect opportunity to pull him, considering it's not like Zach Gallen has been on a heater. We know typically a guy like Zach Gallen, you leave in those situations to work through, but because he's been so bad recently, I think you should have pulled him with the bullpen also pitching pretty good recently as well. The combination of both, I think you should have pulled him. Like, I don't understand why you leave Zach Gallen in the game when he's struggling, but then a guy like Brandon Pfaadt, who I know has struggled a lot this season, but in his most recent start, when he's dealing, gives up like a little soft single in like the 5th or 6th inning and you pull him. I don't really understand that kind of decision making from our manager, Torey Lovullo. Should have pulled Zach Gallen earlier in this game, and Zach Gallen needs to get back on track if the D-backs want to make a decent postseason run. Game 2 against the San Francisco Giants is not going to be easy either. D-backs kind of need to win Game 2 because they need the tiebreaker over the San Francisco Giants. And a win against the Giants in Game 2, I mean, you're putting the Giants like potentially like 3-4 games back of a wild card spot. Like, that would be massive. You own the tiebreaker. You could potentially push the Giants just out the postseason picture, right? Just entirely. You're going against Logan Webb. You got Merrill Kelly, your own personal ace on the mound tomorrow, but going against Logan Webb, the ace of the Giants, not going to be easy. Hopefully it's a pitcher's duel, because the D-backs have not gone to Logan Webb this season or really throughout Logan Webb's career. So if the D-backs offense did decide to wake up tomorrow against Logan Webb, that would be a shock, because Logan Webb in his career has owned the D-backs. So really, I think we need Merrill Kelly in the bullpen to be great tomorrow, and the D-backs somehow get some clutch offense late and win like a 3-2 ball game. That would be my prediction for tomorrow. Logan Webb this season against the D-backs in 3 starts. August 2nd, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. June 23rd, 7 innings pitched, 3 earned runs. May 14th, 7 innings pitched, 1 earned run, and that one was at Chase Field. So this guy on the road, at home, has dominated the D-backs this season, and in 9 starts in his career, Logan Webb has a 2.62 ERA against the D-backs. So this is someone that has, just every time he's faced off against Arizona, has given the D-backs nightmare. So maybe tomorrow they could break through. And one guy that they're going to need in their lineup, if they do want to break through against Logan Webb, I guess at the time of you guys listening to the podcast, it would be today. Jake McCarthy is the guy that needs to be in the lineup against Logan Webb, because he has the most success this season against Webb. 6-for-17 this season against Webb, which is like a 385 average. The next best player on this team this season against Webb is Christian Walker, who is 4-for-14 against Logan Webb. So hopefully Jake McCarthy in the lineup can wreak some havoc. Hopefully he wakes up this team who had just struggled against Webb, throughout Webb's whole career. Gurriel, I don't know if he'll be in the lineup, righty versus righty, but he's a guy that plays better at home. Maybe you get Gurriel late in the game, pinch hitter, maybe he has a big moment against a lefty. Gurriel's a guy who plays better at home. And then just look around baseball, checking the standings. Marlins win, Cubs win, Phillies lose, Reds lose, and of course the Giants lose. So the D-backs still looking pretty good in the standings, holding on to the number 2 spot in the wild card as we currently speak. I'm hoping the D-backs can do a little bit better than that number 2 wild card. I want the D-backs to get the number 1 wild card. Mostly, I mean, some of it is because, of course, you'll get home field advantage if you're the D-backs, if you get that number 1 wild card, right? But really, personally, the reason why I want the D-backs to get the number 1 wild card is because my close homie is a Philadelphia Phillies fan, and he will come visit me if the D-backs take the top wild card spot. So hopefully D-backs end the season strong. Zach Gallen gets back on track, and the D-backs take the top wild card spot from the Philadelphia Phillies. Now I want to talk to you guys about Jace Medical before we get into our little conversation about, is Corbin Carroll already a lock for the Hall of Fame? But first, let's talk a little bit about Jace Medical here, because everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace Case. The Jace Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout. Go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. And don't forget to catch every Dbacks pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. Now let's get back into the Locked on Dbacks podcast, and let's discuss if Corbin Carroll is already a lock for the Hall of Fame. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is that a clickbaity question? Because there's no way a rookie can already be a lock for the Hall of Fame. But the reason I asked this question is more about if you win Rookie of the Year, how often do those players go on to be superstars and actual future Hall of Famers? It's more about Corbin Carroll, the Rookie of the Year. When that award is bestowed to a player, how often does that player actually reach the heights that have been given to that player, right? Actually reach expectations and even potentially surpass them. So for this exercise, I have all the rookies of the year listed from 05 to 2015 because I wanted a good sample size that was recent major leaguers that we know have been in the sport for a while. And I didn't want to go back to like the 80s or 90s. Like I want this to be like players that play in today's game and guys who have won the award, in the last 20 years, like how have they fared and turned out? So from 05 to 2015, that's 22 players. And I have it just listed down as Hall of Famers, multi-time All-Stars, and just, dudes who are solid. So these were all the players who won Rookie of the Year from 2005 to 2015. 05, Ryan Howard and Houston Street. 06, Hanley Ramirez and Justin Verlander. 07, Ryan Braun and Dustin Pedroia. 08, Giovanni Soto and Evan Longoria. 09, Chris Coughlin and Andrew Bailey. 2010, Buster Posey and Nefalti Feliz. 2011, Craig Kimbrell and Jeremy Hellickson. 2012, Bryce Harper and Mike Trout. 2013, Jose Fernandez and Will Myers. 2014, DeGrom and Jose Abreu. Then 2015, Chris Bryant and Carlos Correa. And when we look at all those guys, I have 6 listed as future Hall of Famers, right? Of those 22 guys, Shohei Ohtani, I think, is a lock. Or, excuse me, it's not Shohei Ohtani. He wasn't the guys I just listed. Jacob DeGrom. I think he's a lock for the Hall of Fame. Has he dealt with injuries the last couple seasons? Yes. But when you look at his numbers throughout his time with the New York Mets, he's got like a 5, 6, 7-year prime where he's arguably the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. Absolutely dominant. I don't think it's any question Jacob DeGrom will be a Hall of Famer when he's on the ballot. Mike Trout, another no doubt about it, Hall of Famer. Bryce Harper, no doubt about it, Hall of Famer. Buster Posey, no doubt about it, Hall of Famer. Justin Verlander, no doubt about it, Hall of Famer. So that's 5 guys. The 6th guy might surprise you of all the Rookie of the Years I just listed, but I think Craig Kimbrell is probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. It might seem crazy with the up and down nature we've seen from him in the last few seasons, but he's got a career 2.4 ERA, led the league 4 straight seasons with saves, 9-time All-Star. Like Craig Kimbrell, statistically, when he's retired, is going to be one of the most decorated closers of all time. So I actually do think Craig Kimbrell will make the Hall of Fame. But even if he doesn't, I have him in the Hall of Fame category here. If he doesn't, my next category is multi-time All-Stars. And of the 22 guys I just listed, 11 of them were multi-time All-Stars. Correa, Chris Bryant, Jose Abreu, Jose Fernandez, Andrew Bailey, if you could believe that, Evan Longoria, Dustin Pedroia, Ryan Braun, Hanley Ramirez, Houston Street, and Ryan Howard. So that means 17 of the 22 players were multi-time All-Stars or Hall of Famers of guys that were Rookie of the Years from 05 to 2015. So the odds of Corbin Carroll being a stud and a superstar in Major League Baseball past his Rookie of the Year campaign is pretty credible and pretty realistic, and is something that you should probably bet on. When you look at Will Myers, he was at least a one-time All-Star. So was Feliz. So was Giovanni Soto. So even those 3 guys, they weren't multi-time All-Stars, but at least they were one-time All-Stars that had good careers. Right? Jeremy Hellickson was never an All-Star, but he still pitched in Major League Baseball for around a decade. So it's like, even if you win Rookie of the Year, the odds of you being a multi-time All-Star or Hall of Famer is like 75%. And then the odds of you still being an All-Star after that is still like 99%. Like the odds of Corbin Carroll hitting into the guy that we expect him to be when he was brought up through the ranks, like he's going to hit more than likely. When you look at all the names of Rookie of the Years the last 20 years, like Corbin Carroll hitting the expectations and the ceiling that we've had for him, like it's more than likely that he's going to hit that and actually exceed all expectations that we've had for him. When you even look at the recent guys who won Rookie of the Year, past 2015, you got Corey Seager and the Cody Bellinger. 2017 had Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger. 2018, Acuna and Shohei Ohtani. 2019, Jordan Alvarez and Pete Alonso. Like Michael Fulmer in 2016 was kind of weird, but most of these guys in the last 20 years are all studs. The only kind of misses are like maybe a Michael Fulmer, a Cal Lewis in the 2020 COVID shortened season, a Jonathan India in 2021 still dealing with pandemic times. Like I don't think we have to worry at all of Corbin Carroll just being like a flash in the pan, just being like a one-year wonder. I think you can bet on Corbin Carroll not just being a stud past this season and being an all-star level player, but Corbin Carroll actually being a superstar level player, a potential future Hall of Famer, multi-time all-star. Like that is okay to put those kind of expectations and pressure on Corbin Carroll. Like based off what we've seen from recent Rookie of the Year winners, like Corbin Carroll is on that trajectory. And just where he sits right now in Major League Baseball, currently 17th in WRC plus behind guys like Rafael Devers, who just got $300 million, and Julio Rodriguez, who also got a massive deal. And guess what? For most of the season, Corbin Carroll is probably ahead of Julio Rodriguez in terms of WRC plus, but Rodriguez has been on a tear the last month and a half, 2 months of the season. And Julio is also just a good cautionary tale about how you should be patient with your young guys and how year two, the guy doesn't always pop immediately. Maybe you got to be, wait a little bit. Even look at a guy like Vlad Guerrero Jr., who did pop for one season and then has regressed a little bit. So you got to be patient with your young guys. It's not always going to come right away. Corbin Carroll also currently 11th in Fangraphs and WAR in all of Major League Baseball, behind Lindor, Bobby Witt, and I accidentally wrote Lindor twice. There was supposed to be one other guy here that was pretty noble, but behind Lindor and Bobby Witt, and then he's right ahead of the Juan Sotos and the Jose Ramirez's. So Corbin Carroll right now, when you median the Fangraphs WAR and the Fangraphs WRC plus, like Corbin Carroll's a top 15 player, not just in the National League, in Major League Baseball as a rookie. You look at his numbers, he's the same kind of player against both fastballs and breaking balls. He bats .290 against lefties. Like this guy does everything at a truly high level. He's going to run away with the Rookie of the Year award. And based off what we've seen this season, I don't think we have to worry at all of Corbin Carroll being a flash in the pan and coming back to earth. I think we can believe this guy is the superstar of the future for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, before we talk about, is Ketel Marte the best second baseman in the National League, or is he back at least to being the best second baseman in the National League? Before we get there, first I want to talk to you guys about Sleeper, because the MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance for 100 times payout on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Acuna, Betts, and Ohtani. Pick their stats like home runs, strikeouts, and hits, and if they hit the stats that you pick, you can win up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you can win big. And I use Sleeper not just for daily fantasy baseball, but also with the football season in full swing. I use it. I have a dynasty fantasy football league. It archives our players from year to year. Do the rookie draft on there. You got your taxi squad. Absolutely perfect. So daily fantasy baseball, daily fantasy football, normal fantasy football. Like the Sleeper app has everything. Can win money on it. Perfect. So use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Please go to sleeper.com, download the app, and use promo code Locked On. And don't forget to catch every Dbacks pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss if Ketel Marte is back to being the best second baseman in baseball because after his 2019 season, I think MLB Network did have him ranked as the number one best second baseman in the sport. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. He was right there with Jose Altuve. And statistically, I mean, he was coming off probably the best season of all second basemen in the sport, but he probably still should have given it to Jose Altuve. But 2020, COVID shortened season, just didn't look that good in 2020. 2021 looked absolutely electric. The only issue is Ketel Marte only played 90 games in 2021. Then 2022 was really where I got concerned with Ketel Marte and his future with this team, or not with the team, but just his future in the sport as a player of what his trajectory is going to be going forward. Because in 137 games last year, like 52 ribbies, 12 home runs, like a 240 average, a 727 OPS, 105 OPS plus. Like Ketel Marte just never got it going last year. He started the season super slow. Actually did get his numbers up to pretty respectable numbers by the All-Star break, because that, if you remember that first month of the season, he was just terrible. Then somehow got his numbers up to like an 800 OPS by the All-Star break, and then just cratered once again in the second half. And last year, it was just so weird. You're like, is this going to be the Ketel Marte we see moving forward? Or are we going to get that 2019-2021 Ketel Marte? Because Javier Reyes and I always joke about Aaron Nola, how he's like, in odd years, he's fantastic. In even years, he's terrible. And Ketel Marte is kind of the same way. In odd years, he looks like an MVP guy, one of the best second basemen in the sport. In even years, he's been terrible. And this year, back to being elite, 800 plus OPS, third best OPS plus of his career. Currently leads the National League in triples, over 20 home runs, second highest home run total of his career. Like, Ketel Marte is having himself a nice bounce back season. But is the bounce back strong enough to say Ketel Marte is now the best second baseman in the National League? Well, let's look at his competition. Excuse me. Well, let's look at his competition, because I believe there's only two guys that can even say they have an argument and a case for the best second baseman in the NL. One is Luis Arraez of the Miami Marlins. The other is Ozzie Albies of the Atlanta Braves. So let's go through each of these guys' cases and pick who we think is the best second baseman in the NL currently. Arraez, he's a stud. He's having a fantastic season. The Marlins traded for Arraez from the Minnesota Twins for Pablo Lopez. Deal has worked out for both sides. Pablo Lopez is a strikeout machine, and Arraez is a hitting machine, because he currently leads the NL in both average, not both, because there's no other stat he leads the NL in. I want to say he leads the NL in average, and it's the second straight season he's done that, because the previous year he led the American League in average. So this guy is a hitting machine. Best WRC plus, best OPS, and best OPS plus of the bunch of these three second basemen I'm about to talk about. Leads the second baseman in doubles. And yeah, does he have barely double-digit home runs? He only has 10, I think. Not the same RBI or run producer as the other two, if you want to knock or rise. With runners in scoring position, though, men on the bases, or two outs and runners in scoring position, in each one of those scenarios, Arraez has over a 400 average and just crushes in clutch and high leverage moments, like over 1,000 OPS in all those situations. So with the back against the wall, Arraez is super clutch. Best strikeout rate among these three second basemen, but does have the worst walk rate and does have the worst hard contact stats. So if you're talking about power, if you're talking about home runs, if you're talking about just hard hits in general, Arraez is going to be the worst of these three. Gets on base a ton via the hit, but not a ton via the walk, if that matters to you. I mean, if you're batting 360, I think it's okay if your OBP is not going to be, 500, because you don't walk enough. He's not walking a lot because he's just getting straight up hits, so that's okay. Ozzie Albies, most home runs and RBIs of the bunch. All-star this year over Ketel Marte. K rate, his strikeout rate, basically even with Ketel's, but he does get less walks. Numbers slightly go up with runners in scoring position, but then they take another level when they're just men on the bases. Like, he's pretty elite with men on the bases, and he's also pretty elite in high leverage moments. So Albies is kind of like Arraez, just not as good of a contact hitter, but definitely leans more toward power in the department for Ozzie Albies. So power, Albies; contact, Luis Arraez; but Ketel Marte, the combination of both. Second in home runs, average, OPS, OPS plus, WRC plus, runs, and RBIs. Leads in Fangraphs WAR. Best hard contact stats. And He's the same dude with runners in scoring position and numbers slightly better with men on, but compared to the other two, like Ketel Marte's numbers are the same or slightly better in high leverage clutch stats. The other two, Ozzy Albies like takes one level up, and then Luis Arraez jumps like 2 or 3 levels. So Ketel Marte is good in those situations, but those other two guys are on different levels. So now, after laying out the cases for all those guys, if you had to pick one of who's having the best season in the National League among second basemen, I mean, it's truly hard to say. I mean, if you wanted to pick a guy that you can trust to walk it off for you, just need a single walk-off hit, clutch situation, you probably choose Luis Arraez. But if you're down 2 with 2 outs, there's 3 men on, and you want a home run to change the momentum in the game, I'm probably picking Ozzy Albies. But if you want the balance from the power and the hitting ability, then I think you pick Ketel Marte. But if I had to just pick one dude from this season of who I think has been the best second baseman in baseball, I'm sadly going to go with Luis Arraez. Ketel Marte, maybe he's having a better all-around season than Luis Arraez or Ozzy Albies, but I do want to give credit to Luis Arraez for leading the league in average with a 350-plus average, and he's done it the entire season. This is not someone that was just hot the first couple months with that 400-plus average. This is a guy this past month is batting nearly 400 with over 1,100 OPS. Arraez has been that dude from start to finish who will probably get more MVP votes than a Ketel Marte. And because of that, I think Luis Arraez has been slightly more valuable than a Ketel Marte, has been slightly better as a second baseman this year. And I'll pick him just slightly above Ketel Marte as the best second baseman in the National League this season. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Don't forget to catch every Dbacks pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app or search up Diamondbacks. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.